Hey friends, welcome back. We did a bit of a Kansas City shuffle and came back with different people without rating. It's like heresy. We're going to have a chat here with Erich, Mische, the CEO at Save, and Jen Owens, the director of programs at Save. But first, I wanted to say a quick word. We had a participant. I'm not going to say their name, and if anybody knows who this is, please don't post their name in chat for their own privacy. But last night we had a participant who suffered a stroke and had to step out, so we had to do some schedule changes. But I wanted to say that we're thinking about them a lot, and if y'all would be so kind as to send some thoughts, prayers, healing energy, or whatever works for you, that would be much appreciated. We're having conversations with them and trying to see how they're doing, but you know how it goes. But with that, I'd like to introduce Erich, Mische, and Jen. And Erich, I think you wanted to talk about...
Oh, we got all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, we got all kinds
First
of
of all,
stuff.
thank you guys.
Yeah.
And also to piggyback on what Matty said about the individual who wasn't able to play, is thanks all of those who stepped in to kind of take on that slot. I know that Bogle, you and Radgrid, and some others jumped in like the community would. To help support that person and support the effort. So thank you all for that. Erich, one shirt, Mische, that's right. I just completed my previous hour.
He's actually wearing two.
Now I'm wearing two. I feel as though it's almost naked though. So we're going to have a conversation here today, talk a little bit about what Save is up to, some of our programs. But as we start this hour, I want to let you know that the Save Board of Directors has a challenge here for the next hour. They're going to donate $4,000, up to $4,000 for every dollar we raise here in the next hour. And so anything that you're able to donate here over the next hour will go a long way to help us getting to that goal and objective. So how do we want to start? You want us to start about kind of Save, what we are again?
Yeah. Let's talk about what Save is.
Yeah.
Let's let everybody know what we are raising money for.
Fabulous. Good
during
point.
this event.
So Save is a 36-year-old Minnesota-based national nonprofit that focuses on raising awareness about suicide, and we work to fulfill our mission of preventing suicide and saving lives. We operate through what we call our 4 pillars, which are education and training, advocacy, lethal means safety, and support for suicide loss survivors. And Jen and I'll talk a little bit about what each of those pillars are in terms of some of our programs. As I shared with the community before this year's event started, where this money goes really goes into that programming aspect of what we do at Save. So every kind of collateral material that we produce, every kind of initiative that we're involved with, whether it's things related to lethal means safety, like sending out free cable gun locks, or getting involved in the Kayla's Hope initiative, which we'll talk about a little bit, or some of the work that Jen does with the Green Bandana Project and One Step Ahead. All of the money that we raise is intended to go into those program areas. Obviously, some of that money goes to pay for my salary and Jen's salary and the other team members that are there. But our goal is to try to return as much of every dollar raised back into the programs to help support that mission. And so I think what we'd like to talk about a little bit right now is kind of what we're working on at the moment. And Jen, maybe I'll start out talking about some of our advocacy efforts, and I'll turn it over to you to kind of talk about some of the program and other areas that we're working on. So many of you may recall that last year Save got very involved in this issue of safety, online safety for young people. We got involved with initiatives such as the Kids Online Safety Act and other state-based, what are called age-appropriate design code bills. We continue to be involved with that with well over 200 other nonprofits as a part of a coalition that operates really across the world. This past week, I was involved in a conference called the SHIELD Global Online Safety Conference, which had participants literally from, I believe, 48 other countries that are working on online safety initiatives, ranging from how do we protect people's images in a day of AI and AI-generated imagery? How do we make sure that we continue to provide guardrails for young people as they're dealing with the harms on social media? And so that's one thing that we continue to be involved with. We just launched a campaign along with 15 other nonprofits called KIDS, which stands for Keep It Digitally Safe, which is a campaign contest to solicit ideas for what warning labels might look like on social media platforms. So for any of you watching this who know somebody who has got some creativity, who has some talent more than I do, which that bar is pretty low as it relates to being creative, whether it's a young person or somebody who's not young, go to the website keepitdigitallysafe.org. And if somebody wanted to pop that into the chat, that'd be great. And it'll tell you all about the campaign and tell you how to submit your ideas about what warning labels might look like on social media, what they might sound like on radio, what they might look like on TV, what they might look like on a billboard. And the winning entries will win a $5,000, a $3,000, and a $2,000 education scholarship. And so this is open to anybody from anywhere in the world, even in places that are not Denmark or Dutch, Bogle.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide initiative, basically, or at least people from all over the world can contribute in that sense.
That's right. Whether you live in a place that has windmills or live in a place that doesn't have windmills, everybody's qualified to participate in it. So please check that out. The other areas that we're involved with in terms of advocacy is advocating for public policy related to enhanced safety measures on tall public structures. We're also involved in other efforts coming up this legislative session to have to do with some proposals to provide for greater awareness around 988 in Minnesota and elsewhere in the country. So a lot of stuff going on in the advocacy space that we're happy to talk about more. But with that, Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about some of the other things that we're working on right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just share a little bit about some of our training and education programming. First, we have the Green Bandana Project. That's our high school and college suicide prevention program. And really, there's two primary goals with that program. And the first is to increase students' knowledge of school-based resources that are available to them. So not just mental health resources like counseling and therapy, which of course are very important if you're struggling with your mental health, but also other resources like academic resources, resources to housing, and other issues that students may be facing. And then the second goal with the Green Bandana Project is to increase students' self-efficacy in reaching out for support when they need that. So by self-efficacy, I mean, do they feel capable and confident to actually reach out for support when they need that? So those are really the two overarching goals of the Green Bandana Project. There's a lot of reasons why students don't reach out for help. Stigma being one of them. Maybe they're afraid of losing their scholarship. Lots of reasons. But really with the Green Bandana Project, what we want to do is help schools create a culture where reaching out for support for any issue is a sign of strength, not one of weakness, not that something they'll be punished for, not something that signals that a student's entire life needs to be upended if they are reaching out for support, especially when it comes to suicide prevention. But yeah, we want to create this culture across the country, in schools across the country, that really emphasizes community and that we're not meant to go through this life alone. We're not meant to go through the college or high school experience alone, or solve problems on our own. So just a little bit about how the Green Bandana Project works. We do require schools to have a faculty or admin oversee the Green Bandana Project at school or on college campuses. There's just a lot of moving pieces to get the program set up. So having that faculty member to help facilitate the program really keeps that continuity and keeps the program going from year to year. There are some basic measures that students have to take when they're joining the Green Bandana Project at their school. They take a basic suicide prevention training as well as a pledge stating that they're there to listen non-judgmentally. They're there to help create a safe, inclusive campus environment. And then after they've taken the training and the pledge, they then receive their green bandana, where now they can use that, wear it on their person, and really serve as that kind of beacon of hope for students who may be struggling. Throughout the process, they learn that they're not meant to be counselors, but they are knowledgeable students of school resources, campus resources, and to help get those resources to students, they can hand out either physical resource cards or we're kind of moving toward a virtual resource card with most students having smartphones these days. But that's how they get those resources to the students who are approaching them. So that's like a really fast overview of the Green Bandana Project, again, for our high school and college students. But another program I want to talk about is our One Step Ahead Gatekeeper training program. It's a 1-hour self-led suicide prevention training that really just provides the basic facts of suicide, talks about risk factors, protective factors, and then the warning signs of suicide. And really the most important part of this training is the 4-step process for preventing suicide. Those 4 steps are ask, listen, respond, and follow up. The training includes a series of interactive modules, so it's pretty engaging. Also a virtual conversation activity where trainees can actually practice the necessary skills to support someone else. The program's free. So like as Erich said, a lot of our donations go directly so we can provide these programs for free. You can either sign up as an individual if you wish to take the training on your own. You could go do that after the Save&Raid event has concluded. Or if you oversee training at your company, you can also sign up as an organization, and then you have access to provide that training to your entire company. We also provide an implementation guide that walks you through how to implement One Step Ahead within your company. And that can be accessed on the Save's website, save.org/onestepahead. And kind of where that's at right now, the training's actually a couple years old already. We've been doing it for a while. We've had well over 1,000 people take the training. We have about 60 companies that offer this training to their employees. So we're working on doing just a couple of content updates just because, it's been a couple years, so we're ready for some fresh content. And then we're also working on completing our first formal evaluation of the program to make sure that we're actually seeing those improvements with attitudes and beliefs related to the topic of suicide, and also, again, improving that self-efficacy. Do people feel more confident after taking the training to support themselves or someone who may be struggling?
Nice.
That is,
Yeah, we've.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just posted a link to that training in the chat, and if you're a member of the Save&Raid Discord, you'll get a special role in that Discord if you take it and show me your certificate.
Yeah, it's a great training, and we've got a fair number of people over the course of the past couple of years who've taken it, that have participated in the event, and yeah, I recommend everybody takes it. It's great. It's very useful.
Awesome. And then just again, real quickly, our last kind of training and education program that I want to talk about is called IBEAM. That's an acronym. We love acronyms in the nonprofit world. It stands for Ideal Body, Environment, and Mind, which is Save's suicide prevention designed specifically for the construction industry. We've partnered with an awesome company called Willis Towers Watson. They helped us develop out this program. And we use different strategies for different levels of the construction company to really deploy this program. So I'll just go through those very quickly. We have what's called IBEAM Executive. It's free, it's online, it's live on our website, save.org/IBEAM. It's just a short online module for that executive level C-suite folks who work for construction companies, and really the training just highlights the risk of suicide in the industry and really the importance of buy-in and leadership in suicide prevention in this space. Construction workers see the highest suicide rates in the United States of all occupations. Next, we have IBEAM Supervisor. This is a longer course, about 2 to 3 hours we think it's going to be. It's for supervisors, foremen, environmental health and safety workers, or really anyone who works for a construction company that's responsible for the well-being of others. And this training really helps those folks review current mental health policies within their company, helps them we provide improvement strategies for these companies. And then also, I'd say maybe most importantly, we train these professionals on how to recognize and respond to suicide risk, as well as crises that happen at work or on construction job sites. This is still, we're actually in the review process right now for IBEAM Supervisor, and we hope to have that live in the next couple of months. And then last is IBEAM Workforce, which is a flexible video series that comes with handouts on mental wellness, recognizing distress, supporting colleagues. I think there's 5 different topics that we cover about mental health and suicide prevention. And these are really ideal for Toolbox Talks, which is an industry standard. It's little like 5-10 minute meetings. So they were really designed with Toolbox Talks in mind. And that's meant for the workforce-wide education. And we have that available in both English and Spanish. Again, that's live, save.org/IBEAM, live on the website. You can access that right now today. Yeah, I think that's really all I have about training and education programs. So I'll kick it back over to Erich and Matty. And I think maybe we'll talk about some of our support for suicide loss survivors.
So let me jump in a little bit more on the construction thing. So Jen mentioned that construction industry has the highest rates of suicide in the United States. Actually has one of the highest rates of suicide anywhere in the world, right? And so part of the reasons for that have to do with the nature of the business, right? If you think about it, construction work can be oftentimes can be rather irregular based on the market conditions, right? So you've got people who have work and then don't have work, and then they got to kind of balance their financial needs. It's also an industry where there's a lot of injuries, right? And so you find yourself in situations where if you have a significant injury, you may be relying on prescription drugs to relieve the pain. You may find yourself self-isolating. There's all sorts of different factors that go into why that industry is particularly prone to suicide. The other reason, it's predominantly a male-dominated industry. As we know, men tend to have the highest rates of suicide in the world, and because of that connection there. So as we look at the work that SAVE is doing, we've talked about this before, is that there are other industries as well where those rates of suicide are very high. If you look at folks in the military, first responders, you look at folks that are in agriculture, agribusiness, right? I can't imagine a more challenging kind of occupation right now than somebody who's dealing with agribusiness, right? Farmers in rural communities. And we are starting to see significant upticks in suicide, and particularly in rural communities. And again, number of factors there, if you think about it, is you've got mostly a male-dominated workforce, easy access to firearms, in a lot of places very isolated, so you don't have easy access to health care, so there's not access to therapy and mental health support. So as we look across these industries and try to figure out how can we design trainings that are specific to communities that are at particular high risk, we think that's a key piece of trying to kind of really focus on that kind of grassroots community-based approach to suicide prevention. So I just wanted to kind of expand a little bit more, and that's even with the work that Jen's talking about with One Step Ahead, is to make that program much more accessible and more applicable to college students, to make it more applicable to young people in general. So everything that we're trying to do is really rooted in this idea that what we want to do is really get down into the grassroots, into the community, and work at that very intimate level so that we can be making sure that the impact that we're making is almost literally looking at you in the eye, right? And having those conversations.
You mentioned lethal means when talking about agriculture and farmers. You guys are doing stuff with gun locks.
So we're doing a lot of stuff with gun locks. One of the things that we know is that the highest rates of suicide come about as a result of access to firearms, right? And so being able to provide free cable gun locks to folks, we ship those out all over the country. We've got so many demands right now, requests for it. We're in the process of trying to find inventory, which has become a challenge. Other areas of lethal means safety are things like lock boxes, right? So you're making sure that you're securing opioids and prescription drugs in your household. If you think about rural communities and farmers, you want to make sure that you're securing things like pesticides, right? Chemicals, because those are all factors when you've got somebody who may be at risk. You want to make sure that you're creating that kind of zone of safety, if you will. Even the work that we've been doing on tall structures with Kayla's Hope. And let me share with you a little bit about this shirt and what this shirt is about when we talk about lethal means safety and advocacy. So almost 2 years ago now, we were approached by a woman named MJ who had lost her daughter Kayla to suicide at a tall structure in Minnesota. And MJ had come to us and said, I want to do something to make sure that no parent ever experiences this pain of losing their child to this particular structure. And so we began a process of working with MJ and working with others and legislators to really focus on advocating for raising funds needed to put barriers that were taller. And so one of the things that we know on tall public structures is that if you can put on physical barriers that help disrupt the suicidal impulsivity, you have a very good chance of saving someone's life. And when we talk about interrupting that impulsivity, it means that if somebody comes to a tall structure where there is a barrier, and that barrier acts as a deterrent, right? If it makes it difficult for them to scale it, the likelihood that they're going to stop continuing is very high, and the likelihood that they're going to try to take their life by suicide diminishes significantly. I think, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the data is 90% of folks who attempt suicide and don't go through with it or don't complete it, don't go on to attempt suicide. Again, I think that's the right percentage, about 90%. The other piece of that is if you've got barriers on a tall public structure, you give Good Samaritans an opportunity to intervene, right? So that you're seeing somebody there, you can jump in and say, hey, stop, and let's talk. And so we worked very, very hard with MJ and a number of folks. And ultimately, right before Thanksgiving last year, we had a conversation with the president of the institution where this structure is, who told us that she had directed her staff to immediately install a temporary barrier on that tall structure. First time in 50 years that there has been any kind of structure there, despite the fact that people have known for 50 years that folks were losing their life at this location. These kind of changes take a lot of work. They take a lot of effort, and it requires a lot of advocacy, but nothing that is worth doing that requires significant change is ever easy. And so I will tell you that all of us at Save could not have been more proud of the work that we had done in that particular area. There's still work to be done. We're working to try to get $15 million to put a permanent barrier on the same structure. And we're in the process of having a conversation about creating a national coalition that will advocate for tall barrier protection all across the United States. So just a little bit of detail about that.
Yeah. And that's, that's really important because it takes like 1 to 5 seconds to interrupt somebody, and having a barrier there, I mean, that's definitely not a Band-Aid. That's something you guys have been working really hard.
Yeah. And that is the kind of thing where right? And so I will tell you that we have subsequently learned that that particular barrier has already disrupted at least a half a dozen attempts. So knowing that has already helped save lives, right, is the kind of impact that we really want to see, right? So when you think about sending out cable gun locks, we know that somebody reaching out to us asking for that gun lock is far more effective sense of impact than if it's us sitting at a table at a conference and somebody coming and picking up a cable gun lock like they pick up a free koozie or a pen, right? The fact that you went out of your way to reach out to ask for that means that that's something that you're being really deliberate about. So that makes us feel really good because it means that that person is intentional about trying to prevent suicide in that household.
Suicide and accidents.
And accidents. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
Any questions before we kind of go on? We want to talk a little bit about quick save, right? We want to talk a little bit about lost teams. I think we just want to kind of talk a little bit in general about the state of the world and making sure we have a conversation about how everybody kind of takes care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And just a reminder, the Save Board of Directors is a $4,000 challenge match going on right now. So if you got an extra $4,000 sitting around, or $1 million, or $5, feel free to send it our way. Any questions?
We've been seeing
Go ahead.
We've been seeing some donations coming in already. Yeah, it's good that you remind everyone. We're about halfway through this hour, so definitely, if you feel like donating, do so now, because it will be matched by the Save Board, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and we've had a couple questions coming in that Like an Apple's been grabbing for us and sending to my screen. One person wanted to know where they could find out more about the Green Bandana Project, Jen.
thegreenbandanaproject.org. I will pull that up and have someone throw that in the chat.
Cool. Some other just suicide-related questions that have been asked in chat. What are some of the biggest barriers to reaching people?
Oh, that's a really good question. There's lots of them. First of all, as much progress as we've made about reducing the stigma of suicide, it's still a challenge to get people to talk about suicide. One of the questions that was addressed to the panel yesterday was, while we've done a really good job, really worldwide, addressing this issue of mental health and having those conversations. We've got to up the intensity of those conversations about suicide specific conversations. You know, when we go talk to companies about suicide, right, the first thing they'll tell us is that, hey, we have a really active mental health program. And it's like, that's great. What are you doing? And what are you doing to talk about suicide? It's like, well, you know, there's still that resistance out there. So one, we still got to continue to focus on breaking down the barrier of talking about it. The fact that you guys have now done this event for 5 years, right, is an example of breaking down barriers, right? Mm-hmm. You're having those conversations with this community and beyond this community. So continuing to have those conversations, being willing to talk about suicide, willing to talk about the causes and the complexity of it makes a big difference. You know, other barriers is just, you know, the world that we live in, right? There is so much information, so much going on. It's challenge. And then there's just the reality of there's only so much time in a day, right? There's bandwidth issues. So I think for us, even organizationally, it's where do we think we can make the most impact? Where do we think we can make the most difference, given the resources we have available, given the bandwidth and capacity we've got? There's a lot of organizations that are out there doing good work in this space. What we want to do is we don't want to replicate what they're doing. What we want to do is amplify what they're doing and help support and elevate that. We want to look for the gaps. We want to try to fill those. We want to make sure the things that we're doing, we feel as though we're doing them with the best of our ability, and that they're having the kind of impact that they can make. And so it keeps coming back to this time and time again, which is we just got to keep talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Another question that was asked, do you guys work with police force and other law enforcement?
We do. This would be a good place, Jen, to maybe talk about loss teams.
Sure. Yeah, I know in the past we've definitely worked with law enforcement too on creating, one page kind of, law enforcement suicide prevention specific collateral materials, things like that. But we're actually working with local police departments now in the state of Minnesota, working on kind of a new initiative for the state of Minnesota, not a new initiative overall, but they're called LOSS teams. So LOSS stands for Local Outreach for Suicide Survivors. And it's a group of volunteers that are trained specifically to provide immediate resources, healing support, and hope to those grieving a suicide loss. And there's really kind of 3 key features that go along with the LOSS team. It's immediate response. So LOSS teams will collaborate directly with law enforcement to get a notification when there's a known loss by suicide or death by suicide in the community. And that will deploy a LOSS team to go even on scene to support folks who are dealing with such a significant and horrible loss. So they can do scene response or even respond to that family 1 to 2 days after a loss. It doesn't have to be directly on scene. The second key feature is peer support. One of the members of a loss team has to have experienced a suicide loss themselves to really provide that understanding and that peer support, that connection, which we know reduces kind of that isolated feeling that new survivors might be feeling. Like they don't understand. You don't understand this loss, but when someone who's experienced it shows up, we hope to kind of reduce that isolation that someone might feel. And the third is resource connection. So we want to put information and resources in the hands of those newly bereft right away. Mental health services, counseling, information for support groups for folks who've gone through this, and any other helpful resources that they may need to kind of handle the aftermath of a suicide loss, because someone else has walked this walk before and they can help guide them through that process. So how does it work? We work with law enforcement. We have to work with the agencies and make sure that they're on board to add this into sort of their protocol when they do scene response. And that helps ensure kind of a timely outreach from our perspective and getting to the person experiencing a suicide loss. Save also needs to collaborate with community resources to make sure that we are providing resources to these folks that are available, not a counseling center who doesn't have appointments for 6 months. And also the LOSS team members are trained. They're trained specifically in responding to suicide loss and the newly bereft and crisis support. So again, it's really important to emphasize that one of those LOSS team members are a survivor themselves to really provide that direct peer support.
And part of the reason why this is important, right? So Jen mentions that we're doing this in Minnesota. We were asked by the Minnesota Department of Health to lead up this effort. And while there are lost teams in other states across the country, our goal will be to kind of learn from this and see where we can help to expand it beyond Minnesota. We got some requests from Texas to talk about how we can potentially work with communities in Texas to do this. But one of the things we know is that this type of approach is both postvention, right, which is helping that family newly bereaved deal with that suicide in the immediate aftermath, and it's also prevention, right? We know that family members and those closest to a suicide are most at risk of being themselves potentially suicidal, and so being able to intervene in this way is critically important. Another aspect to realize, if you're not aware of this, and frankly, I got to be candid, I wasn't as aware of this, and till we have one of our board members is the deputy chief of police, who shared with us that the role of police officers when they show up at a scene where there is a suspected suicide is they treat that scene as a crime scene, because what they need to do is to make sure that that wasn't something other than a suicide. So the role of first responders when they get there is really to secure the scene. It's not to provide emotional support or resources to the family, right? And so the goal here of that loss team is to be in a position to provide that support, especially once it's been determined that this indeed is a suicide. I also want to point out that the person leading this for us at Save, his name is Brittany Sensor. Brittany came to us. Brittany was one of the people that was working on Kayla's Hope at the very beginning of the process. Brittany herself is a suicide loss survivor, having lost her daughter, Aria Joy, at 13 years old in 2019. And so for Brittany, she understands the importance of having this loss team concept because she's lived this experience. So having Brittany helping lead this initiative really makes it a lot more personal for us and impactful, and makes sure that we are looking at this from the full spectrum of opportunity to help those suicide loss survivors.
Cool.
Wow. It seems like you've since the last time we talked, I guess there's been a particular uptick in like programs that you've started or continued or like really put in the work. How, just for the people watching, like how big is Save? Like how many people work with Save on stuff like this?
Not big enough, I'll say that. So we've got a staff of around 7 people that do all this work, right? Program work, fundraising work, administrative work, some of whom you've met, right? You've met Margaret, who is responsible for helping order all the shirts and coordinate that and get that out to everybody. So big thanks to Margaret for that work. Brittany and Shuatao, who work with Jen on programs. Josie, who you've worked with, who's our marketing and communications manager. We're bringing on a new development director here in the next 2 weeks. So it's a small team. I often say that, we really punch above our weight given the resources and the staffing that we have. And one of the things that I think is really important to us as a staff, and certainly important to our board, is to make sure that what we're doing is meaningful programming that fulfills our mission. We could go out and give a lot of speeches. We could go out and do a lot of presentations, and that's great. And I think important people do that. For us, what's really important is that we're making sure that we're interfacing at a grassroots level, that we're collaborating with other organizations, working in partnership with them. We belong to any number of different coalitions and task force and groups like that. And it's important for us to be able to do that because it helps to extend our reach and our impact, but it also allows us to help do that for other organizations as well.
Great. Thanks.
So, sorry, some of the other questions that were coming in chat. There's 2 here that I'm kind of going to roll into one question, but I'll ask them both. Are gun owners, because we were talking about lethal means safety, are gun owners asked if they have been feeling suicidal prior to registration? And a follow-up question to that, is suicide more largely considered impulsive versus planned?
I can kind of speak to that first question. I know there's some programs out there that work with gun shops in training them how to ask that question if they are approached by someone who's looking to purchase a firearm who seems distressed. There are some signs to look for, right? But yeah, I don't know that there's anything like mandated about that in the state of Minnesota or really anywhere. But there are folks working on it. I think the Gun Shop Project is actually what it's called, and I can look that up and throw that in the chat. But yes, there are people definitely like working on making sure that folks who are selling firearms are aware of the warning signs and know how to ask that question.
Yeah, I would tell you that there is not a state, right? There's not a mandated requirement that you ask those questions. I think there's any number of initiatives that go on. I think if you look at some of the gun owners, the hunting organizations and things like that, you've got a clear understanding from them that they've got to start looking at how do we address those issues? How do we make sure this information gets in front of people? I think everybody is aware that, particularly in the United States, there is always that kind of tension on Second Amendment issues and whether or not you're going too far, yada, yada, yada. I think from our perspective, more information you can provide to gun owners, and both for themselves and those that live in their household, about the risks associated with firearms and suicide is critically important. We're going to continue to amplify that, continue to talk about it. To your second question, I think you've got to look at suicide as very complex, right? There is certainly our understanding of suicide today in terms of why suicide happens, while I think the understanding is broader, I don't know that it's gotten us any closer to being that much more successful in always preventing it in the level that we want to. I think that is clearly evident by the numbers that we see. I think if you talk to folks today, guys like Craig Bryan and other folks who are out there leading this conversation, saying we need to look at suicide through the prism of more than simply mental health and mental illness. While certainly people who are mentally ill die by suicide, we know for a fact that people who are not diagnosed as mentally ill die by suicide. There are factors related to alcohol and drug use. There's the impulsivity related to suicide. And so that makes it all the more challenging. But it also makes it all the more reason why conversations like the one you had yesterday with the folks with Stop Soldier Suicide and the Black Box Project is critically important. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with the folks from Samurai Labs out of Poland, where we're talking about the role of AI, not so much as a therapeutic or an intervention in that sense, but as we look at the possibilities of AI, can it create an opportunity for us to analyze and assess data that may be able to better pinpoint those who are at most risk of suicide? I would say the jury is still out on that. We don't know enough about it, but we do have to accept that the reasons behind suicide are so complex that our approaches to it have to recognize that nobody has got a single answer to this.
I was thinking about this last night because we did have a conversation with Samurai Labs, which is a very interesting thing that they've got going on over there, which was basically they trained. You mind if I talk about this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, they trained an AI on dozens and dozens of suicide notes, and then basically were looking for a place to let it loose in like Discord or in other chat rooms or blogs and forums to try to look at those warning signs that somebody's basically getting ready to say goodbye. And I was thinking last night that Black Box and Samurai Labs should probably connect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great connection. And again, I would say that's part of the beauty of this event, right? Is the opportunity to connect people from all over the world. I mean, let's kind of take a step back. If we think about the greatest advancements in the last 30 or 40 years in science and medicine have happened because of the capacity for people to communicate globally, right? We were able to map the human genome ultimately because of the ability for scientists from all over the world to communicate in real time. And I think ultimately the best success that we're going to have in solving the riddle behind preventing suicide is going to come about from the ability of all of us to be able to communicate what's working, what's not working. And, you know, we're having that conversation with a number of different nonprofits throughout the country right now that are working on suicide and asking the question of all the organizations that are out there. There's got to be organizations that are showing significant success in preventing suicide in places that we yet have to discover. And we've got to have those conversations. We've got to figure out how to get those voices into the room, because for so long, there's really been a fairly small number of those groups in the room. We really need to expand that, get more voices, create more inclusive conversations around suicide prevention. And that's one of the things that I think we're really excited about, is the work that we're doing now and what can we be doing to bring other people into that conversation.
You're talking about,
Right.
Sorry, Bogle, go ahead.
No, I said great.
You're talking
Go
about
ahead.
new places to get the conversation started, and outreach might be a good time to talk about QuickSave a little bit.
Go ahead. You and Jen, this one's yours.
So last year, when you guys were introducing us to the Green Bandana Project, I had the idea that there could be an adaptation for that into the Twitch and Discord space. And we've been having conversations over the last year. And basically we're at the point where my wife and I are going to help develop that alongside you guys for our community and beyond. And kind of like Green Bandana was, you know, the people have, like, there's leads, and then there's people that have the symbol somehow on their avatar or through like a Twitch badge. If we can get that conversation started, there would be known safe people to talk to if somebody was having a crisis that could be in people's Discords and be people's moderators in their Twitch channels. Not mental health professionals, obviously, but people that were there, a calm person in a moment of crisis that can help them find resources in their local areas. So that's something that's got wheels under it. Like, that's green light. That's something we're going to be developing here in the next few months that I'm really, really excited about. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to start work on that.
You guys brought that to us. Jen, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was great.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Yeah. I think for us, that's a great opportunity. Again, that's the beauty of these conversations, right? Is that people come up with ideas and suggestions, and it's the same way we got involved in Kayla's Hope, right? Yeah. Somebody reached out to us and it was like, what can we do to make a direct impact? I was peeking up here, and Old School Jay raised an issue related to AI and concerns about where we're at with AI. And Old School Jay, I would agree with you. I don't think we are anywhere at a point right now where we should entrust AI in a lot of different places. We're seeing some significant concerns related to AI chatbots, and particularly with young people. We are way, way away from being able to take our hands off the wheel and let AI dictate how we're going to address some of these issues. I think we've got to look at AI as one tool among many, but it's got to be one that human oversight has to continue to be really robust. For any of us who've used things like ChatGPT and things like that, they are certainly tools that can create some efficiencies, but there is no question that there are limitations to these tools that we have to be mindful of. We should be very wary of anybody who tells us that the future of AI in suicide prevention and therapy and behavioral support is now, because it's not. We're not there yet, not by a long stretch.
And like, back to QuickSave, that's one of the reasons that we had conversation with, with people developing an AI program like that. And it could definitely supplement a program like that. Like, that's a conversation we're going to have. But I think with, QuickSave, for example, and Green Bandana, obviously that needs the human interaction.
You got to have that. Yeah. And while it may not give you the ability to be as ubiquitous as you'd like to be right away, it's the best way to learn how to scale, right? Yes. And to do it safely and with human oversight.
Yeah, and some of the other things that we were doing basically within QuickSave that we'd like to do is, and I know a lot of people in chat, you're in Discord communities or you're streamers and you've set up your Discords a certain way. We've been watching things, and we did a survey back in December and got over 100 responses to it. It was full of information that honestly opened our eyes to some things that we could do in this that we hadn't expected. A lot of people mentioned vent channels in their Discord, which, that's a real, if you put one in your Discord, it's a mixed bag. It can become a moderation nightmare at times, or be unhealthy at others. One of the things that we'd like to do as part of the Quick Save project would be to develop like best practices for mental health channels over the word vents, or what that totally optional things, but things that could help people building a new community or repairing an old one.
Yeah.
That's something I'm actually really excited about that came out of that survey that I think we could do very well.
Yeah, it's so useful because we've, as streamers, you learn very quickly, right, that you have sort of a responsibility towards your community, and it can sort of sneak up on you, right? You might not be prepared for that. So any tools that help upcoming streamers, or even long-running, like experienced streamers, people leading their own however small community, is going to be incredibly useful.
Yeah. And that's something. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
And that's absolutely something where, when the Quick Save initiative is rolled out, like, it's not necessarily would be targeting streamers. They absolutely could be part of it. Community members could be part of it. I think the thing that I keep coming back to that I like the most is moderators in Discords. People that would take the training, the pledge, which we'll be developing, and be there to supplement the streamer in the community, because the streamer's doing 20 jobs all at once, right? Like, that's why we have moderators. And I think that's a great place for a streamer to be like, hey, my favorite moderator, why don't you take this if you're up for it? And they can be there in whispers and Twitch, they can be there in vent channels, they can be in PMs if somebody needs them. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think this, we're discussing Discord and Twitch right now because that's where we're at, but I think this could go a lot farther and pretty quickly. Because there's, we're definitely not looking to limit it. That's just where we are at the moment. But this could spread out into Facebook, Instagram, anywhere.
Yeah, look, we know that there's any number of platforms, any number of places where these kind of things can provide value and resources to folks that need them. And so, we're excited to continue the conversation and see where it goes from here. And it'll be nice to be able to come back next year and share with everybody the progress that's been made on that.
Yeah. There's about 11 minutes left in the hour, so maybe Erich would be a good idea to repeat the board offer to everybody so that they're all aware of it.
So if you don't know, the Save Board of Directors has got a $4,000 challenge. They've all kicked in to put in $4,000 to the event here, and so thank you to the Save Board, and thank you to all of you who've donated already. Incredibly generous. I'm just now starting to get all my blood circulating back after wearing all the coats and shirts from the last hour. So if you're in a position to be able to help donate, that's great. Also, obviously, you want to make sure that you donate within your means. So don't donate more than you can, or that you should. The other thing that I want to touch on a little bit, and I don't know if we have any other questions, but do we have any other questions at the moment?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Please
Okay.
go ahead.
So I want to talk a little bit, because a lot of the conversations that we've had here this weekend at Matty and Apple's home here, who've been kind enough to share their space with us, along with their two dogs, Juniper and Retro.
As long as you come here and make us omelets every morning, you're always welcome.
Well, and then we had some tremendous soup last night that made by Lady Gamega, and Seek was requiring me to do a couple of tequila shots, and it was all very magical. Missed you this year, Bogle, and Jen, and I think Bogle said that he's building on a new addition to his house so that we may be able to do it next year there. One of the things I want to kind of talk a little bit about is the state of the world that we're in today, because I know that there's a lot of you who are kind of, whether you live in the United States, you live outside the United States, right? You may be concerned about Ukraine, you may be concerned about your job, you may be concerned about how public policy is towards the LGBTQ plus community, all of these kind of things. And just a little bit of background on me. besides being an old guy and the CEO of Save, is I spent about 35 years of my career in local, state, and national government politics and public policy. And so I'm familiar with the churn of what happens in elections and politics and its impact on our lives. And I want to encourage all of you who may be facing kind of struggles with the world around you is take advantage of the resources that have been shared here throughout the week through Save&Raid, right? For those of you who have access to hotlines, call, text, or chat 988, or some of those resources that are in your own countries. They are there for a reason. They're there to help you kind of have a conversation, to talk to somebody. They're also there to help others. So if you got somebody in your life who is struggling and you don't know what to do, take advantage of those resources. They're confidential, they're free, they're there for a reason. All of us need help from time to time. All of us need to ask for it. And sometimes you can't ask your friend, you can't ask your husband, your wife, your partner, right? You may not be able to ask mom and dad, a brother and sister. So ask somebody who you don't even know by reaching out and have that kind of an anonymous interaction from somebody who cares about you. So I can't stress that enough to anybody here, is that regardless of what you think you're going through, you're not alone in this. You're not the only person experiencing these feelings and concerns. Make sure you take advantage of those resources. And if you ever need help, if you ever need an idea of what you've got to do to get access to those resources, you know how to get a hold of us at Save. We're not crisis counselors, but what we can do is try to connect you with resources that can help you. But right now, during this conversation and long after this, don't hesitate to reach out to those crisis hotlines that I know have been shown throughout Save&Raid this year, and I hope you'll continue to take advantage of those.
I saw a couple questions come up directed at QuickSave, specifically. How do neurodivergence and disability intersect with Save's work, and can those intersections be incorporated into the QuickSave program and other work in the online spaces?
I don't have it. You and Matty had that.
Yeah.
Well, I just commented kind of on the side here, but I mean, I think that's a great question. I think this is why Save tries to work with people with all kinds of lived experience to build that into our type of programming. So we'd love to hear from people with neurodivergence and disability that would like to help us kind of build that into the programming.
And I envision it being an all-inclusive program. Like there wouldn't be we wouldn't look at somebody and be like, oh yeah, no, we would really think hard about that, right? And another question that's similar to that, hypothetically, if I were to undergo training for something like this, what about the situation where I am overwhelmed myself and need self-care, but someone comes to me in a crisis? We will, in the training, address this, and it will be a teamwork effort. If something like that is too triggering and maybe you don't fit into the category like the other program you were talking about, where it's mostly people that have survived a loss, or their own mental health and maybe too triggering, maybe that's not the right program for them. But it'll be a teamwork effort. There will be other people in the program, in the community. Like one of the things I imagine is that it'll be based out of a Discord where everybody in the Discord is working together towards this common goal of being that presence. So, if it needs to be a tag team, that's something we're definitely going to look into.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I can speak to how we kind of handle this now with the Green Bandana Project. Yeah. We educate students that are interested in participating that they don't have to carry their green bandana with them all the time. If they're personally struggling, they can kind of tuck that away and not kind of serve in that role during that tough time. With QuickSave, I know we talk about maybe having a badge be kind of that symbol of, the symbol that I'm someone who can support you. But if, you're not feeling like that's something you can do, you can kind of hide that or put that somewhere else until maybe the crisis has passed and you feel ready to support someone again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at 988 lines, you look at 911 lines, all those folks that are trained on there all have their own backups, right? They have their own resources to help them as well. So
Yeah.
the idea is have kind of redundant support systems built in so that folks who are providing that assistance also have their own assistance available to deal with that as well.
Which is definitely something we've been talking about in this because, you know, helping somebody can be a very intense thing. And if it's something you're doing multiple times a week, if there's a week like that, absolutely we're going to have something available to look after the people who participate in the program. I don't have details on that, but it is something we are thinking very hard about.
Apple in chat said something that really resonates. I think, you know, everyone needs to put their own oxygen mask on first, which is something that we always tell participating streamers in this event as well, right? And I think especially an event like this can show that that is very important and also just not a problem, like, right? Like if someone needs to drop out during the event, for instance, you know, we figure it out and we make sure that these people are supported. And yeah
and
absolutely.
Truthfully, there's, you know, that's one of the things when we have to back out of something for our own health. Like, you have the thought in your head, like you're already feeling bad about yourself, and you have the thought in your head that everybody else is going to be looking at you in a certain way, and that's usually not true. You know, your own mental health is really important to you, and nobody else gets a say in that. So if you feel the need to take a step back and heal, you should.
Yes.
And you just should.
And I think we're coming to the end, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just to kind of wrap up on behalf of all of us at Save, Jen, myself, our board of directors, our staff, and everybody who supports us, cannot thank each of you enough. Obviously, Matty and Bogle and Apple and Game God and Seeky Wisdom and Tinderly and Radgrid and everybody on the team who put this together. But each and every one of you who participated, who's donated, who's just simply been here and amplify your voice. Thank you for all you do. Take care of yourself. God bless you. We love you.
Love
Thank
this guy.
you.
Before we let everybody
Thanks.
go, because this is a question that Jen and Apple have been asking the other panels, is what are their favorite video games? And Jen, I would love to know yours, but I definitely want to know out of the 2 years that you've played video games with us, which one you liked more out of Half-Life or Diablo?
Oh, Half-Life.
Yeah?
Unequivocally, yes.
All right. We're going to ask again next year.
Okay.
This does not surprise me. Is that mostly based on how easy it was to play?
Wait, you're suggesting that I liked it because I thought it was easy?
Easier.
Easier, yes.
Easier.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
pretty
yes,
sure
yes.
that's the Dutchman.
You know, the graphics were just easier for me to see and make out everything. So that clearly
You know what?
part
That's
of it.
fair.
Bye.
How about you,
Wow.
Jen?
I feel so basic saying Mario Kart, but that's just like what I grew up with. I had a like hot blue neon Nintendo 64, and that's just like the only game I had.
You're
It was
far
super
from
fun.
alone there.
Yeah.
I know, it just feels so basic.
Mario Kart 64 was my first Mario Kart. It was awesome.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
great.
it was awesome.
Amazing. Thank you both of you for joining us here. I'm going to go ahead and start the raid to the next participant, which is Team Wildwood, who was actually here yesterday. Yeah, at the watch party.
All right,
So,
bye.
yeah, thank you both
See
of
you
you.
back in the
Everyone,
office,
thank you
yeah.
so much.